Welcome to Herd Mentality, a podcast where we discuss how the power of audio moves minds and markets. I'm Brittany Rigby, Managing Editor at Little Black Book, and each episode I sit down with creative thinkers, marketers, and makers to explore how the world's most creative brands use audio to make people think, feel, and act. Today, I'm joined by three of our industry's best, ready to talk about how sound is shaping brands in the travel category. Jules Hall is founder and CEO of indie creative agency The Hallway. Welcome, Jules.
Thank you.
He works with Oonagh Flannery, Chief Marketing Officer at Webjet. Thanks for joining us, Oonagh.
Pleasure.
And last but certainly not least, we have the excellent Gayle Weil, CEO of Havas Host. Welcome, Gayle.
Thank you.
Oonagh, I'm going to start with you. Late last year, you launched the most significant brand transformation in Webjet's 27-year history, and it starred talking suitcases, which is my favourite bit.
Webjet's taken the family to Fiji. And look, I've been stuffed. I've been sat on. I smell like banana sun cream. And I'm having the time of my life.
Can you just take us back a step and explain what led to that transformation journey?
Sure. It started back in September 24 with the demerger of the Webjet online travel agency business away from the larger WebBeds B2B business. For 27 years, the B2C business was a bit of a cash cow, I think, for the B2B business and was probably underinvested in some of the key areas that would have been critical for its growth. And so when the demerger happened, there was this deep recognition that there were just really good bones in the B2C business that we could take advantage of and grow. And so that led to a vision to double total travel value by 2025 or by 2030, sorry. And so from that stemmed a 5-year strategy. And as part of that, brand was seen as a really key strategic pillar. And there were two aspects to that. There was the transformation of the brand, so the brand strategy, the aesthetic, etc., but also a deep understanding that we needed to invest more in brand if we were going to be able to take share of voice from some of our competitors and really grow the business. So that essentially led us to The Hallway, and that's where all the hard work really began.
I'm betting that the two agency CEOs love a CMO saying that brand grows business. Who knew? You upped your media investments significantly as part of that transformation and reviewed your media mix. How did you think about audio's role as part of that media mix?
Look, I think the truth about the Webjet OTA business in the prior, let's call it 5 years, was that we'd become a bit of a one-trick pony in terms of our marketing channel mix. We were deeply reliant on the bottom of the funnel. We were deeply reliant on paid search. And I think every marketer worth their salt knows that you need a diversified media mix in order to be able to drive the kind of awareness and reach that you need to drive results. And so that was the first starting point. The second thing then was growing our audience, but not just the current audience, but appealing to new audiences. And so we wanted to go and find those audiences where they were consuming media, and audio was clearly a big part of that. The other really important piece was essentially which part of the funnel that we were trying to influence. So Webjet brand awareness, super strong, but consideration, particularly for some of these growth verticals, was really quite low or lower than we would have liked. And so we knew that we needed to drive consideration, and that requires storytelling. And there's probably no better place to tell stories when you have the space and room than in audio. And so that's really what kind of led us to a mix that was much more skewed to audio than anything that we'd done in the past.
Sounds like a pretty good brief, Jules.
Yeah, it was. And it was really interesting because we started off early in the process. So McKinsey came in and did a bunch of work on the broader business strategy. We collaborated with them on the research that fed into what they were doing. Then the brand strategy came out of that. And it's a business that I've known for a long time. And it's very exciting to have that opportunity to help take it to the next level.
I'm going to come back to you and ask about the creative in a bit. But Gayle, your agency recently launched the first ever sonic branding for Fiji Air, featuring the choir famous for Moana, which jumped out to me. Welcome to our home. What business problem was Fiji Air trying to solve?
So I'm hoping that everyone here has been to Fiji.
I haven't.
You haven't? Okay, well, that has to change. Get onto Webjet, book a holiday.
Great, done.
To get
Via
to
Fiji Air.
Via Fiji. But
Done.
I think what you probably all brought back with you was those memories of the people. From when you arrive in the airport, there's a band that welcomes you, through to the chatter, the voices, the singing that you'll hear in the resorts, or even just when you're out doing adventure kind of excursions. It is just embedded within Fijian culture, and people come back with that association of not just the happiness, but the role that music plays there. And it's a big part of Fijians feeling that it's home as well. However, it's mostly associated with the place, not a carrier that takes you to the place. So as Fiji Airways were looking at how they could become a world-class airline, the whole brand experience was looked at. And there was just this great opportunity for a holistic audio moment or experience to really go end to end throughout their customer experience. So we had to look at two things: how we could make sure it was authentically Fijian and cultural, and really brought to life, I guess, what made Fijian music and songs so magical. It is a deep part of their spirituality. It brings across their show of care. They learn it in schools through ear, not music, and amazing things like that. So being part of working with Pacifica, the kind of choir there, and they're not just the voices of Moana. Dr. Ete, their kind of teacher and the principal at the university there that leads the Pacifica choir, actually also was choir master of the New Zealand choir as well, that worked on some of the Lord of the Rings films.
Oh, no way.
So he has amazing just composing skills and experience, and really brought the energy. And I think they brought the harmonies, that sense of diversity and inclusion that was so important in what we were doing. But we had to make it world class, because we could have Fijian sound. We could have used the choir to do almost anything. Their voices are a huge instrument, but really to get the heritage that we wanted and to make sure it was really ownable. But importantly, a Fijian song or tune that was ownable in 3 seconds, in 3 minutes, in 10 minutes was what was really the key in what we had to do to land that brief.
I love that you started to talk about just how far that sound stretches, but it really is a full sonic ecosystem. There's versions across different languages. It's an audio logo, there's boarding music, there's cut downs, there's in-flight communications. How did you think about a sonic experience specifically for a brand in the travel category that is really all about creating experience for customers?
Yeah, I think travel is a really interesting category for audio. It's cluttered, it's price-driven, it's really, really rational. And I think from what you've kind of experienced as well, using audio is a really good DBA to break through some of that and make it. But also from an airline's perspective, particularly, you're in that brand experience for a long time, particularly if you're flying out of Australia and you're trying to get somewhere. So whether it's from the check-in moment where there might just be something playing in the background, or there's a language or a moment from a line that people can kind of replay, through to the lounge, the boarding gate, those annoying pre-flight kind of announcements where you're trying to fall asleep or kind of watch the start of a movie, through to when you arrive. There's just so many opportunities there for us to really have cut through and take away the stress. So music brings a sense of place, or sound can bring a sense of place. Travel is stressful, whether you're scared of flying, whether you're panicked about whether your luggage is going to get there. So how could we really use particularly the Fijian uplifting and warmthness to make people feel like they'd started their holiday before they'd even left? And I think that was really how we looked at being able to cut down elements of the overall 10 minutes of kind of choir song that we've got.
I love that observation that travel is relaxing and lovely and something that you look forward to, but also inherently stressful and difficult, and you don't really want to be in the airport. You want to be where you're going to.
Exactly. And I think I often hear, none of us here are Australian, but you often hear Australians boarding that Qantas flight, and as soon as they hear the first bits of, I still call Australia home, there'll be like a sigh of relief, or there'll be that pull on the heartstrings, because what we are doing is, I guess, we're creating national pride in something that is carrying the kind of the Fijians home to where they're so proud and so happy to be, as well as welcoming visitors into that country as well.
Did you think about pride in the Webjet brand, Oonagh? Because there is something about travel and the process of booking a holiday or a trip home that feels like it taps into some part of you that feels pride either for having the bravery to go on a big adventure or get out of your comfort zone in some way?
Yeah, I think the pride in being an Australian and Kiwi brand was really at the forefront, and Jules, drove a lot of the sort of the brand strategy work around that idea that we wanted to be that local travel companion. So we wanted to talk to you one-to-one, like we understand who you are as an Australian or a Kiwi. So I think from that perspective, absolutely. But I think we also wanted to invest an element of trust. And we think we have that because we've got 27 years of heritage. But how do we convince the audiences out there who don't know us or who know us but haven't used us yet that they can trust us as well? So that's been a really big part of the work that we've done with the Hallway in trying to bring the new Webjet brand to life.
Jules, could you explain to me that strategy a bit more? Where did you start and where did you get to in terms of the human truth?
Yeah, this notion of what you were talking about before, Gayle, of the journey versus the destination is quite an interesting tension, as you called out. And there is joy in travel, and it's a fun experience. Like it's the break from the norm. It's something we all look forward to. It gets quite rational though. The conversation of booking a flight, booking a hotel. I, for one, love going on holiday. I don't necessarily love the process of having to think about a holiday. So my whole life thinking about stuff, organising things. So Webjet is selling that booking experience. So how can we inject joy into that moment? Like it's the essential moment of travel. So then we got to the platform idea of go somewhere. And that's what holidays are about. You got to go somewhere. It's pretty simple. And we had an ambition in the brand purpose to bring joy back into travel. That's what the suitcases enabled us to do. It gave us a way of talk. It's just such an easy visual metaphor for travel. It gave us the opportunity to inject personality, to show what Webjet stands for, cares about, how it feels, put an emotional layer into the brand that you can connect with that isn't always there when you're just selecting flights and prices and destinations.
The suitcases are so fun and they do feel each like their own little character. Their voices are all different. They work whether you're hearing them and seeing them or hearing them. What was the journey like to get to them as a device?
So we got to the device quite quickly. The journey to create the device was quite long.
Sure. Yeah.
So it was the craft that went into it. Like we created the sets, so they were roughly the size of this table. It was all shot in stop motion. The craft that went into the voice, the number of VO records we did to get those right and how we wanted it was quite significant. But that's what makes it magic. And I think that's what in the world we live in, where there's a lot of fast content, there's a lot of cost pressure, there's a lot of speed pressure, there is still time and there are still ways to inject the craft within the budget constraints that we all have to work within. And that's what I think comes through really nicely.
How's it working for the business so far, Oonagh?
We were really pleased with the results that we've seen so far. In fact, Jules and I have just been hot off the press, really, because it's been, I think we've been in market for 8 to 10 weeks at this point. So we're still, every day getting a new sense of what it's done and what it's delivered. Clearly, driving brand health and sort of brand metrics was really important to us. So we've seen some real strong growth from a flights awareness perspective, which is really great because it's our core product and it's what we're known for. And the fact that there was still room for us to grow that prompted awareness in flights was really, really important. And we've seen that across Australia and New Zealand. So we're really, really pleased about that because the core is always going to be the core. But probably the thing that we're probably most proud of is that one of the key verticals that we wanted to increase awareness that we offer and that we can bring you on a true destination, a true holiday, was the idea of holidays or holiday packages. And in both Australia and New Zealand, we've seen a statistically significant increase in prompted brand awareness for packages and holidays. That was, I think, our number one.
It's a very technical way of saying it.
Is it?
What I hear is it's working.
It's working really well.
Well,
it's working. It's some big numbers.
There's some really big numbers in there. It's really quite significant. And I think when you've only been in market for 8 to 10 weeks, that is an indicator that we can expect big things from a packages and holidays point of view as the campaign continues, essentially, and that momentum grows. We've also seen some really good results, I think, from the campaign in terms of campaign diagnostics, but I'm happy for you to talk through those because I know that they're a point of great joy for the team of the whole way.
Look, it's really interesting. As you're talking there, there's so much data that and I love immersing myself in the data. I think probably the biggest indicator of how well a campaign's working is what other people tell you. It's the anecdotal conversations. And that, with this campaign, has been so many people have come up to me and gone, I love the suitcases. You know, we haven't seen that kind of work for a little while. And it's when you get that feedback from the community, and there's probably people that have got a bit of an interest in advertising as saying it, that are saying, but that doesn't happen very often. People don't pat you on the back for a piece of work that often. Like, we're quite cynical. We see a lot of content. And that's a really important metric from my point of view.
I think as well, when you're getting great feedback from people who fundamentally get it, but also have seen every piece of work to ever exist in that category, for it to feel like something that grows the brand and not just the category, or for it to feel like it's doing something different or joyful or helpful for the category in addition to the brand, feels like, you know, that's feedback that you can only really get from people who get it and see it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that was one of the key, when you actually go into the data around, so we've done a lot of analysis, not just the brand, but also the creative and what's landing and what isn't and what message is coming through. It's distinctiveness is one of the big things. And to your point, there's so much clutter. There's so many palm fringe beaches and price-led communications that all look very homogenous and similar. When you've got something that's cutting through and people are calling it out for its distinctiveness and difference, that's important.
Audio has the power to light a fire in you. It also has the power to literally put one out.
Gayle, the Fiji Air project, I imagine being trusted with something like that is a big responsibility. You're shaping what an airline sounds like. There's important cultural sensitivities, there's category considerations. How do you know when to listen to what a client says they want and when to push them out of their comfort zone a bit?
I think it's interesting doing it for a national carrier.
Yeah.
Because there is a huge privilege in it, but also a lot of fear in it and a lot of anxiety in it. And so it was one of the few projects you'll probably get where it was less about brand and being on brand and more capturing a spirit and an authenticity. And I think the team at Fiji Airways were brilliant at making sure that we had access to people, that we could really immerse ourselves and understand and could bring, I guess, their own ear to what was being developed and what was being composed. But really, we had to give it over to Dr. Ete and the Pacifica Choir because it was their voices. It was all the instrumentalists that we went around and found different musicians. There's 3 different vocalists that often don't perform together on there because there's a Hindi vocalist in RV, there's Cookie and lots of different voices because Fiji is about harmony. It is about that diversity. And so making sure we were really representing the underlying values and qualities of that culture and that nation was more important than was it going to be on brand. I think what we with Massive Music and lots of other kind of collaborators could do was really then bring a different perspective, that non-Fijian perspective. Was this going to be refreshing? Would it really stand to the world-class elements we needed it to be of having that versatility and flexibility that we could use it throughout a customer journey? But I think importantly as well that people would sit up and take notice, not just Fijians who love it and hear music like that all the time, but how does it make someone that might be the first time they're hearing something like this feel? Because it is a bit of an earworm, particularly when the English kind of chorus drops in. It's kind of a beautiful thing. Whether you understand the Hindi or the Fijian in the other verses doesn't really matter. And I think that's what we wanted to capture. So we didn't really have to push or kind of convince any brand guidelines or pull in any different direction. I think as soon as people heard it, they'd know whether it was right or wrong.
There's like a really lovely simplicity about that idea that in a category that's so cluttered, and I'm imagining largely targeting Aussie and Kiwi travellers who the domestic tourism markets have really boosted their own advertising efforts. Every market in the world wants Aussies and Kiwis to come because we have to travel a long way to get anywhere. And if it feels right, then that's a great starting point.
That's sound, isn't it? Or music in any form. How does it make you feel? And I think there is a feeling of Fiji. And so we had an amazing starting point. We weren't manufacturing anything. It's there. It's how we really could shape it and distill it into something that was accessible to the work and versatile enough to be able to do what we needed.
Jules, when I think about the Hallways work, weirdly, I think about how it sounds. I can't believe that Boys Do Cry is as old as it apparently is now, but that was the piece that first popped into my mind. And then there was that amazing piece of work last year for B-Lab with the fat cat on the boardroom table, and that voiceover is so sharp and so clever. And I thought of that. What do your favourite brands sound like?
I was thinking about that question on the way here. It's they all sound quite different. They've got to sound relatable, and they've got to sound interesting enough to get your attention. And that's very different depending on the type of brand or the context you're hearing it within. And it's a very obvious statement. It's quite a hard thing to achieve. So how does a brand show up from an audio perspective? It's something I don't think we think about quite enough as an industry. We're very focused on how it shows up with copy, with visuals, with film. The audio component, I think back to brands like Binge that we created, and how that, and we were very influenced by the Netflix sound, how we could create something when shows are loading that makes it uniquely Binge. I go back to another piece of work we did many years ago where we worked with a sports psychologist who'd done a whole bunch of research into music and how it impacted sporting performance. And so it was for a product owned by Frucor Beverages called MyZone, the sports drink. And we created performance-enhancing music where we got musicians and composers to work with the sports psychologist. So broad answer to your question, they're all very different. But I think when you land on something that is distinct, is ownable, is memorable, it's really, really powerful.
Yeah. And Gayle, there's something to the point of a Fiji Air experience about how sound brings an experience to life, whether it's an in-person sporting event or an airport or a shopping centre. So how that space sounds impacts how long you want to be there and how you feel when you leave it.
Definitely. And I think sound is used in so many ways just to do that, isn't it? The supermarkets play certain music that will kind of make you want to pick things up and do it. So we are used to the psychology of sound as well. It's just something that we probably are not leveraging anywhere near as much as we do. Going into a spa and the relaxing kind of music, we know it instantly can have an impact and build memory structures from doing that as well.
Well, it's all sensory, isn't it? It's how we play with human sense and link it to our brand and make it relatable, make it memorable. Then you just hear that noise or you smell that smell and you create that association.
And I think you're both right. You both said we don't talk about it enough as marketers, and it's so unbelievably powerful. And I'm pretty sure that there are statistics that show the amplification effect that really good sonic approaches in creative can have on the efficacy of that creative. And we definitely don't talk about it enough. I'm excited to see what we do with these cases and how we bring those amazing voices and accents and make more of them next year.
I love that. What would you say then, Jules, to brands that are underinvesting or underestimating the power of audio? This
is probably my strategy sort of brain comes in. You got to really understand where it fits in. because you can't just make a sound. The sound's got to bring your positioning to life in the right way. So I think make sure you've got clarity at a strategy level, then you've got the creative canvas to work with.
Oonagh, you said that you spent more on audio than you had previously because you knew it would be an important part of the mix. What would your advice to other marketers be to figure out what role it should play in their mix?
I think you need to understand what it is that you're trying to achieve. So, for us, like I said, consideration was really important. And I feel like we've really achieved our consideration goals by the incorporation of audio, because it allowed us to tell, long form stories. And I think authenticity has been really important here as well, because we did a mix of ads, but we also did live reads, and we've done really deep partnerships with podcasts and other things. And so it's knowing your audience, being authentic, and understanding what part this should play in the overall mix. It's not going to solve all of your challenges, but we need to think about how consumers consume media. And I think sometimes we get a bit lazy about that as well. Sometimes it can turn into personal preference rather than what your audience want to do. And it's easy to fall into that trap. And so that's why we need to listen to experts and think about strategy and make sure that the mix is right for who it is that we're trying to influence.
That idea that you are not your audience.
I say that almost daily.
Yeah. There's a really robust comm strategy, obviously, that sits around this. There's almost a comm strategy just for audio. Like how we're using different podcasts to tell deep, long format storytelling versus more retail-led, in like audio advertising to all the different touch points, which is, it's quite interesting when you go into the schedule for this particular campaign with the audio lens.
Yeah, it's very diverse.
And if you're spending the money on the media, then why not make the most of those channels by making the creative fit for channel
100%.
working as hard as possible?
I also think it's one of those channels that we kind of forget how high attention or high trust it is.
Yeah.
As the rest of media is changing around us. So people are choosing to listen to things, whether that's podcasts or the radio, whether it's the run to work, commutes, I don't know, the wind down time. So actually they're lent in. It's one of the few channels we still have where that is there. And for lengths of time, if you think of it as well. So it feels like we're not really leveraging that part of it enough versus just keeping it on the media plan. I think it's important. It does have its own comm structure and the right use of those different elements of audio within it as well.
It's very intimate. Like you think a lot of people listening with headphones.
Yeah.
And I was reading this data about when, going back a little while now, when in the UK, Coronation Street used to go to the ad break and they had to increase the amount of electricity through the networks. Everyone putting the kettle on.
Yeah.
Because they walk away from the TV into the kitchen. You can't do that. You don't do that with the headphones.
Fellow Brit Gayle knew exactly what you were talking about.
It's a great advertising stat, that one.
But I do think there's an incumbency on us as brand marketers to make sure that the content we do give people in that moment is of the right quality.
Yeah, people aren't listening to advertising or to not advertising. They're listening to what entertains them.
Don't betray the trust they've given us. Don't betray that time they've allowed us to be with them in that really intimate context.
Gayle, I'm going to ask you first. Question that we always end with. Favourite piece of Sonic branding or favourite ever jingle?
I was torn because I do get a mild thrill when I hear the dun of Netflix. It's kind of like downtime's happening. I'm going to watch something really terrible. But I think it has to be the Macca's. I'm loving it. I think how universal the endurance that's had behind it. And it does just, wherever you hear it, you can't help but kind of repeat it. So I think it's done wonders from a memory structure point of view. And just does, I haven't had McDonald's in years, but I still have a little bit of joy when I hear it.
The Macca's Sting, a classic.
Oh, I'm having a real mind blank here. Come back to me.
Well, so I'll step in then. And I'm going to pump up one of our competitors here, which is with Uber. I think the Uber doorbell, like, it's just gold. Like, to have got to that association of the delivery, Uber Eats, doorbell, and it's you hear the doorbell, you know it's Uber. And that's pretty powerful.
The one that always sticks in my mind, and it's totally random because I haven't lived in the UK for a really long time, but it's the Tesco's Every Little Help. Like, that is such a tiny moment, and then it is so synonymous with Tesco. And yeah, that's the one that immediately springs to mind for me. So simple, but really effective.
I love that. The small moments that actually do a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? Like, it doesn't need to be a big thing. It's just a really relevant, timely,
Seconds.
and it talks to the cost savings,
Yeah.
And consistency.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't change.
That hasn't
That's
changed
right. Yeah.
in over 20
Yeah.
years, I'd say. And that's the other thing. We all get very bored very quickly as marketers. Consistency.
You heard it
is
here.
key.
Consistency is key. On that note, thank you so much for joining us, Jules, Oonagh, and Gayle.
Thank
Thank
you.
You.
If you're a brand looking to connect with Australians, there's no better place than Aussie Radio and Audio. It reaches more than 15 million people every week and truly is where brands are heard. Head to cra.au to get started. See you next time.